Alright, so now that we're in the rhythm here, and we're just going to keep it going, keep that momentum working in our favor, I'm going to do what I was showing you guys before and maybe just find a few more shapes that I want to duplicate and work with. Alright, let's take shape 13, which I believe was a copy of shape 2 from earlier. Alright, I'm just going to continue to get that variation that I was talking about in the previous lesson, and adding a few of these shapes kind of off to the side. Right. Although now that I'm looking at it, they kind of look, this shape kind of looks like that shape, and I might not do that yet. So I'm actually going to create a new layer, make another new shape, just to get something more, a little bit different. But, so far you guys have been getting quite a bit of practice with the pen tool, so I think by the end of this you should be pretty comfortable with it. A lot of times this is helpful when you're making, say, like vexel or vector-based art. So you can never have too much practice with the pen tool, in my opinion. There have been some times when I've actually had to mimic 3D logos by creating it completely in vector. There's a lot of times when you'll want a vector version of a logo, just so you can resize it and things like that. If you're, working on, say, like a sign that is going to be big, you can't really use a logo that was created in Photoshop for that and scale it up like 500%. It's just not gonna work, and it's not gonna look good. So instead, you'll have a vector logo, and if you're working on something where say you're working for a brand or a company, they almost always have a vector version of their logo. But every once in a while, you might get that case where they try to send you something else, another file type. And, sometimes that can be a bit of a headache, but it does happen. And, in those instances, there have been times where I have had to, trace their logo. And I guess, it's good practice. It's not always what you want to do, but it is good practice with the pen tool. I think there was a logo once for how to train your dragon in 3D. And, I basically had to train myself in replicating a 3D logo by just tracing the entire thing in Illustrator, so we'd have a vector version of it. And in the end, I don't even know if they even used the vector version of the logo or what they ended up doing with it, but at least they had one. And by the end of it, I felt 10 times more comfortable with the pen tool, having probably spent about 2 days straight just working on that. So it was good practice, and it came out good, and I think everyone was happy with it. But it's just one of those cases where you have to use the pen tool and try to work quickly. All right, so I mean, 2 days might seem like a long time to work on a logo, but I don't know if you guys have seen this logo. It's pretty complex. With just all the edges and everything. But okay, so what we're doing here is just kind of looking at our shape, and I'm just trying some different stuff. Maybe I want to distort it a little bit. Or actually instead, let's try warping it. It's not going to let me warp a folder. All right, so what I'm going to do in this case is, because it wouldn't let me warp the whole folder, I just have to warp this single shape. All right, so don't worry too much about the fact that your highlights aren't going to match up if you have to warp this, but they will still only be visible within the area that we tell it to. So you'll see, you can do that. I think in this case, I'm just not happy with the way that shape really looks. So I'm just gonna come in here and kind of recreate it, make it a little bit different than what we had going before. All right, I guess other times, when you're working with the pen tool and airbrushing and things like that, you do have to toggle between your tools pretty quickly, and that's when I think the shortcuts really come in handy. For switching foreground colors, and like I showed you guys before, being able to toggle between your move tool and any of your other tools. Another quick little tip is you know, if you want to sample a color from your image, normally you might just hit I on your keyboard to get the eyedropper tool. But if you have your brush tool selected, or any of your other tools like the marquee tool that I was showing you before, just you can quickly toggle the eyedropper as you're working by hitting the Alt Option key. I guess it only works when you have the brush tool, but you can see just by holding it down, I'm able to quickly sample a color. So you can see it changing down here. But as soon as I let go, I'm right back to my brush tool. So it's just like the other shortcut that I showed you guys previously, using the Move tool. Okay. So hopefully, you know, some of these things are new to you guys. I don't know, you know, I'm sure some of you guys know about this stuff already, but for those of you who don't, you might find it to be pretty useful. All right, I know I found it to be a big time saver, especially when you're doing, you know, paintings and photo manipulations and stuff like that. Okay, so the shape is pretty good. It's more of a, I guess, a weird distorted pear shape, but I can work with it. All right, so I'm just going to mask it out again, painting in a little bit here to kind of have it fade out on the bottom. You know, let's see what that looks like, you know, kind of overlapping our phone a little bit, or, you know, coming up here. And you guys can see, you know, on the image of the phone, the highlight is pretty strong on the left side. So, you know, maybe we're going to add some additional light coming in from there just to help reinforce that and help sell the believability a little bit more. All right, so I'm just going to transform that. And, you know, maybe something like this. I'm going to go back to my layer mask here and just remove a little bit more of it on this shape. And on the past one layer, I'm going to add some highlights on this side. So it'll just help give us a nice nice gradient kind of effect there. Okay, and maybe we move this shape, you know, towards the bottom of our layers palette, just to see what'll happen when we actually move it behind other shapes, so it's not on top all the time. All right, so you can see I'm just quickly kind of moving it around, like seeing what'll work. All right. You know, is it over here? Is it down here? And do we want it to be, you know, facing that direction, or should it be going more like that? You know, do you want to make it bigger or smaller? You can blow it up a little. And just, you know, continue to rotate it and play around with some of these transform tools. I mean, that's what they're here for, you know. It's just, there's so many ways that you can achieve these effects in Photoshop. There's, you know, for everything that you want to do, there's probably 10 ways you can do it, which is one of the things I love about it. You know, there's no one right way to do it. All right, I actually kind of like the way something like that looks, where it's, you know, overlapping that shape. All right, and maybe it's just like that. I mean, you don't need to see the entire shape. But in this case, since we know this shape is going behind this larger shape in front of it, hold down the Control key and click on this shape. So that'll show you shape 4. All right, and as soon as I click on that, it's now brought me to the shape 4 folder. All right, so what you can do if you want is to go to the layer mask on shape 4 and, you know, remove some of it by painting in with black, to just see a little bit of that edge from shape 15, which we just put behind it. All right, so not too much, but just enough, just a hint of it there. I think is kind of nice. All right, something like that. You can go ahead and, you know, brush some of it back in if you want, but I just wanted to see what that would look like, and, you know, I actually kind of like it, being able to see it. Just makes it more transparent. All right, so go ahead, create a few more shapes, or if you want, you guys can make copies of some of the shapes that we've created already, as I showed you how to do, and just continue to build this up, you know, and see what happens. This one's getting a little too crazy. All right. Yeah, so that's not a very nice edge there, but that's okay because I'm gonna maybe hide most of that edge behind something else. All right, so this will be shape 16. We'll probably end up with about close to 20 of these shapes before we start to add some more effects, but you just want to be able to have enough to really work with. You don't want to end up only having like 5 shapes and then just, duplicating those 5. I think that you should have a good number of layers to work with. All right, so let's move this just below the cell phone. Let's see what happens when it's over here. Maybe I'm gonna flip it horizontally. Rotate it a little bit to get rid of that edge. And then maybe it's just kind of poking out down here somewhere. It could be even cropped off of the canvas if we want it to be. To help add a little more tension, like we did with some of the larger shapes. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's just an option. And if you don't like it, I mean, hey, you can always scrap it and try it again. Let's take shape 8. I'm gonna make a copy of that. This is a pretty good shape here to use. And the nice thing is too that when you're duplicating some of these shapes, there's certain sides and edges of it that you can't see because of where we've placed it. So it's nice then when you can reveal a part of the shape that you haven't seen already, because then it just looks like an entirely different shape altogether, right? Like you wouldn't know that these two shapes are the same looking at it now just by transforming it a little and moving it around. Okay. Maybe this one's even smaller. Just looks like a little particle kind of, broken away. All right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it. Get in there pretty close and see what it looks like when we mask it out a little. Does that get us anything? Does that buy us anything, or? Yeah, it works a little bit, Yeah, I think something like that. And I may have gone a little bit too far, so I'm just going to brush some of that back in with white. Yeah, something like that I think looks pretty good. All right, but hopefully you guys are still with me and you're getting it. We're getting there. I'm gonna go ahead and make a copy of ring 1. So now I think this is 5th or 6th ring here. All right, just go ahead and make it a little smaller. Transform it, and maybe it comes over somewhere in the middle. We don't really have any rings in the middle here, and that kind of works because now just looking at the rings, you can see it kind of helps to keep your eye in the middle, focused on the cell phone. So that's one of the other nice things about negative space. It's your friend, and you can really use it to help guide the eye through the image and get people to look where you want them to look. All right, so I think from here, our image is looking pretty good. So I think what we're going to do in the next lesson is, maybe build up some more of these shadows from behind the cell phone, and then we'll start to bring in some light effects and maybe some flares and things like that, and just continue to have some fun with it.